Hello and welcome to the Wedding Guide podcast. I'm your host, Pete the Celebrant, and we are proudly sponsored by Easy Weddings. Easy Weddings helps thousands of couples nail their big day every year. With their award-winning directory and mobile apps, you can find and book your top-rated wedding supplier. You can stay on track with their planning tools, or for a more hands-off approach, you can work with a wedding planner to save you time and money. And the best thing, it's free. So jump onto easyweddings.com.au to start your stress-free journey up the aisle today. And we have Darcy Allen from Easy Weddings to guide us on deciding what and who to book in first and what to expect as the months get closer to your big day. Allow me to introduce you to the very knowledgeable Darcy Allen. Well, hello and welcome everyone to another episode. And today we have with us Darcy Allen. Darcy, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Pete?
I'm very good. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast, but it's great to have you back.
Yeah, as always, enjoy it. I'm sure people are absolutely sick of hearing my voice on this.
I doubt that. What's something new in your world at the moment?
New in my world? The usual. I'm actually a bridesmaid in 3 upcoming weddings before the end of the year. So it is bridesmaid central at the moment.
Wow. Yeah. Not just working weddings, you are living in all weddings.
Yeah, my whole life is just encompassed by weddings. I'm curious as to whether I'm asked to be a bridesmaid as a good friend or based on my expertise.
Maybe it's a little bit of both. That's not so bad.
But look, yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I love doing it. So yeah, my life at the moment is hens party planning, actually.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I keep then asking about hens questions, but I won't, because I want to talk about a step-by-step guide for couples. And I hear when I'm talking to a lot of couples, I'm asking them, how's it going? And they'll tell me it's going really well. We've booked, the venue, we've got a photographer, and we're now looking for a celebrant. And I'm like, cool. And then after the booking everything, or sometimes I'm like one of the last things to book, and they're like, we're pretty sure we've got everything, but we're just scared we're missing something. So I thought we'd talk about what do you recommend from Easy Weddings perspective, and your own perspective, because you are married, you help people plan marriages for a living and in just your everyday life with friends. Let's go through what you recommend in order to book things, a bit of time frame, and maybe even talk about some of the things that people are just worried about missing something. And I want to help them to go, well, no, rest assured, these are the things that might come up, and just so they know they're on the right path.
Absolutely. Sounds great to me. I think we hear very, very similar feedback that you're hearing from couples. Is there anything that I've missed? Here's what I've done so far. Can you give us any advice on any missing pieces?
Yeah. Cool. Well, where does someone start? Where do you recommend?
Absolutely. So realistically, I think it starts a lot earlier than we think. So as a wedding planner, as a wedding expert here at Easy Weddings, I'll tell you that 99% of the time starts with the venue is the best place to start as that big ticket item. Yeah. However, in the reality of things, it starts, at the engagement or even before that. Like, I know, let's be honest here, I know many women, and myself included, have researched their wedding before potentially getting engaged.
Sure.
It's something that you aspire towards. Even grooms, and men, we have, I've had a lot of men ring up and they haven't actually proposed to their partner yet. And they want to kind of talk through, they want an expectation of what to expect and how far in advance they need to do things so they can plan. So I love speaking to a detail-orientated groom. It's lovely. And surprise. I think also, engagement parties are a massive thing now, as they're a big piece of the wedding planning, especially if you want to do a destination wedding, which is coming back into the world now that we can travel again. Everyone's in Europe at the moment, which is absolutely killing me to my core. Putting it on social media. Destination weddings are back, or, you want to do a smaller, more intimate wedding at a beautiful restaurant, or something a little bit more on the smaller side. So perhaps you have the big engagement party instead. So there's a whole lot of planning that goes into the before as well. But I guess once you've got the ring and you're getting down to the thick of things, we always recommend the venue as a great starting point. The reason for that is the reality is most venues can only do one wedding per day. Or potentially if they have multiple spaces, there might be, a preferred space that gets booked out in advance. So venues is the big core piece, because you get your date and then you can filter everyone else around that. Yeah. However, in the grand scheme of things, everyone's going to do things differently. And my biggest piece of advice is always going to be, if there's something that's a must-have for you, plan that first. If there's a must-have celebrant that you've seen at a friend's wedding that you have to have, if there's a dress that you have to have, and that's going to be the driver, or a suit or some attire of some sort, even a pair of shoes. You might have the wedding shoes before you have anything else. If there's something that you cannot live without and it's a must-have, book it in and work everything around that. But if you don't, I'd always say the venue is going to be your best starting point. The other thing I'd say to a venue as well is around the ceremony component. And we are here at Easy Weddings in our venue planning team. So my team speak to couples every day and help them guide them towards their perfect venue based on their needs and their event requirements, which is a completely free service, I might add.
Yes, it is.
So the thing that we're getting a lot at the moment is ceremony only requests. So a big piece of advice I'd love to talk about today is, if you're not having a traditional church wedding and you're not having the ceremony at your venue for your reception for any particular reason, we know that, over 50% of people will want to have ceremony and reception at the same venue to potentially save on a bit of cost, logistics-wise, for photographer travelling to and from, and more importantly, for the ease of your guests. It is great to do it all in one. But if for any particular reason you don't like the ceremony location that your venue has to offer, or you want to have two separate locations for photos and things like that, I think it's just as important to lock in the ceremony pretty much at the same point at that reception, just to ensure that you can marry up those two dates. I think the biggest thing that couples aren't aware of before going into this planning process is 80% of venues won't do just a ceremony. They'll only take a ceremony booking in conjunction with a reception. Sure. So when you 6 months down the track, you've had your reception, your dream venue locked in, and you're trying to marry up a ceremony location to your date, it can be really difficult, especially if you're a 4 o'clock prime time spot. So my suggestion is to kind of do them concurrently. So if we're looking outside of a church, council reserves and parks are always going to be a great option for a beautiful garden wedding, and having things like pop-up marquees or umbrellas on hire is usually an added recommendation, especially for Melbourne brides, and even New South Wales at the moment are experiencing quite a lot of rain. Queensland even. So the other things, so gardens, obviously here in Melbourne, and Sydney, the Royal Botanical Gardens are very popular. So you can usually do that through the local council or the governing body of that particular garden. The other one would be government buildings. So I think something that a lot of people aren't aware of, a lot of libraries, so the State Library of Victoria, State Library of New South Wales, art galleries, the Melbourne Town Hall, these kind of iconic government buildings will actually allow a ceremony only. So because they're not run by a catering arm who are, used to doing the reception and the big food and beverage component, you can pay usually a hire or a venue hire charge. National Trust, all of these properties will do just a ceremony. So that's my biggest piece of advice, marrying up your ceremony and reception venue at the same time if they're not in the one location.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's really good to know. I think that I feel like a lot of weddings are done same venue and then going to the reception. But it's good to know if you can't, or if you're planning to have a reception at somewhere where you don't want the ceremony, that you might struggle, particularly if you do want that prime time of that 2, 3, 4 o'clock.
Exactly. So in terms of a time frame, so, pre-COVID, we were talking about an 18-month booking window, generally speaking. And I think over the last 2 years, that's kind of extended itself out to a 2-year window. But there's nothing wrong with being ahead of the game. If a venue haven't released their pricing for 2024 or 2025, they will let you know that at the time of the inquiry, and they'll give you a time frame as to when you can expect that information. Or majority of them were happy to take on your booking a few years in advance based on a minimum spend requirement. So they'll say, you're contracted to X dollars, this is what you'll have to spend. but everything else in between potentially could be subject to change. So the cost of a 3-course meal or the cost of a 5-hour beverage package may fluctuate in the next 3 years because of inflation and everything we're all experiencing now. So there's nothing wrong with getting in early.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Sorry.
You can save money. Sorry, Pete. I'm just talking over you again.
No.
I was going to say, in some instances, you can actually save money, because if the venue's happy to take you on and honour the pricing that they've already got for 2022, 2023, for example, and they say, hey, if you lock in now, we'll honour this for 2024, you're actually getting ahead of the game and locking in based on current pricing rather than 2 years down the track.
Cool. I like that. So you lock in the venue first, and probably the best recommendation is try and get a place where you're going to do both. Otherwise, look at Parks and Recs if you're going to do a ceremony and a reception, different locations. Yeah, or maybe just a different time change if you want that sort of morning spot at that winery, and then go for the afternoon at where you've planned the reception. Okay, cool. So we lock in the venue. What happens from there?
Absolutely. I think the easiest way, and what I'm always telling my couples, is any vendor that doesn't have the ability to do multiple weddings in a day. So you're thinking things like Celebrant. So I know, Pete, you're probably doing multiple weddings a day just because you are who you are and you're so in demand. But I'm sure you'd love to be able to just do one a day. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It can be hard because of the travel and like that sort of prime time weddings. But if someone wants to do a morning, it's like, yeah, I can do that. There's very rarely an issue with that.
Exactly. So generally speaking, same as in the venue piece, there's a prime time spot that everyone wants to get married.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I'd highly recommend booking in someone that's realistically got a one slot for that day. So your celebrant, your photographer and videographer. Obviously, if you're going for a bundled deal whereby they have multiple shooters within the same brand, fantastic. They can obviously take on more than one booking a day. But if there's one fantastic photographer who's a one-man band, who's been, you've been following them on Instagram for 3 years and you adore their photography, absolutely lock them in. Pretty much the minute you've got the date secured, even if it's just a tentative hold with the venue, start putting the feelers out to your favorite vendors and making sure that they're available and can marry it all up together. So I'd probably say the next 4 big ones would be your celebrant, photographer and or videographer, if you're having both services, and also music. So if there's a particular singer, you've been following, or you've seen an amazing acoustic singer at a local bar and you say, I absolutely have to walk down the aisle to that voice, book them in. Make sure you get them on your date.
Cool. That's a really good way to view that. And I think I'd always known the order that people book things, but never actually put that together, that these individuals can really only do one a day. Unless it's, like you said, a bigger team of, like a Baker Boys or like a C2 sort of, bigger companies have more people working for them. But if it's an individual, you want to lock them in earlier. Okay, cool. So once you get those things locked in, like your celebrant, your musician, photographer, if you're doing videography, where to from there?
Absolutely. So again, it also comes down to the type of venue that you've chosen. So most of the time your venue will include catering or alcohol or both. So if in fact your venue has not, so let's say you're booking a beautiful DIY venue, maybe Warrawong Estate or Rockley Farm or something like that, and you have to bring in your own catering, that's another big piece. So anything, when we talk venue, we're talking food, beverage, and the actual venue hire. So you kind of mirror all those 3 things at once. So making sure you've ticked off catering. And the other one would also be wedding planners. So if for any particular reason your venue doesn't have an on-site coordinator or someone there on the day to set up place cards and ensure your vision comes to life and keep all your vendors in check and make sure everyone's arrived on time, or perhaps you need that extra helping hand, so you're looking for an end-to-end stylist and someone to plan the full wedding with you, sometimes they would actually be locked in before the venue. So there's some fantastic planners who can help you find the perfect venue. We here at Easy Weddings can, of course, help you find the perfect venue as well. But yeah, planners will probably be the next big ticket item. If you have found your venue and you want someone to help you with the rest of the items, Wedding planners and or stylists will probably be the next big one, who can help you create the rest of the journey and visualize the entire process.
Okay. I think it's really good as well for those who are planning a bit more of a DIY wedding. Or if you're at a spot where it sort of gives you free reign, where it's just like, yeah, come do whatever you want, where it might not be completely DIY, but if they're not going to have a wedding planner there to help, it's so good to have someone who can just do the little bits of running around, putting things down, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. Yeah, that's good advice.
Absolutely. And I guess what you're referencing there, Pete, would be what we would call an on-the-day planner. So especially if you are going the DIY route and you need that helping hand, a lot of amazing planners offer like a 3-month package. So you actually book them in, say, 3 months out. You've done all the hard work, you've done all the hard yards, you know exactly how your wedding, you want it to feel and how you want it to look. And then they're there to marry it all up, check over everything that you've already done, make sure you haven't left out any last pieces, and actually physically be there on the day to make sure it all runs according to time, all the vendors arrive, everything's set up as per your vision. So there are kind of, you have end-to-end planners who you engage from the very beginning before you've even found the venue, all the way up to, 3 months out. We've had couples who ring up just before the wedding, a couple of weeks before, and just say, I need some expert advice and support. Just want to make sure, like you said earlier, that we haven't missed anything.
Yeah. Okay. At what point, I'm not sure if we've completely talked timeframes because I know it probably changes, but I imagine, I think you did mention about a year and a half to 2 years was you won't have any issues if you're doing it at around that time. And maybe from a year out, you'll probably still get a lot of things, but maybe not everything. And then, so are we saying once you've locked in your venue and your main 4 of music celebrants, photographers and videographers, are you then going into that? What time frame are you then planning everything else? If it's not like a must-have that you recommend doing straight away, like a dress or a suit or the cake, like at what point do you start booking these things?
Absolutely. So in that, say, 3-month window, when you first get engaged, you've locked in the venue and the kind of 4 key suppliers that we've just talked about, I think a dress, especially just with things post-COVID, I should say, have changed dramatically. So dress is kind of that next key item, but the dress also helps you to book the rest of the items. So if you are wearing a wedding dress specifically, or potentially a suit or attire, that might actually be, the deciding factor on the cake and the flowers and the invites and the actual color palette. Because you've already decided, okay, I'm going to have a princess ball gown, or I'm going to have a beautiful lace back, or I'm going to have an olive green suit, or I'm going to do a traditional tux. So that might actually guide the rest of your vendors. And you'll actually find that like a florist and a cake supplier are going to ask you, what does your dress look like? Or what does your suit look like? Or what attire are you going for, so that they can help you to guide you to the right styling elements and the right color palettes and the right scheme. So I think attire comes into play a lot earlier than people expect. Most dress designers can turn around a dress in about an 8-month window. However, if you're quite indecisive, you want to go back and try it on again before making the decision. If you want to, buy it from a particular designer and take it to someone else for alterations, these things all take that 8-month window and extend it out. So again, there's nothing wrong with being ahead of the game and getting in early, unless you're waiting. And these amazing dress designers and shops and attire suppliers, they will guide you what to do as well. So if there's an amazing trunk show upcoming in 3 months for a designer that hasn't hit Australia yet, that they know you're going to like, they're going to say, hey, you know what, why don't you wait 3 months, because such and such is coming to Australia with their newest collection.
There you go. Actually, I just received an email invite to some wedding dress night.
There you go.
Just came out of nowhere. I was like, there you go, I'm invited. So that really that's even the dress, like you want about a year out, you want to be booking that, or an attire and that.
Exactly. And I guess, you most likely have been following these suppliers for a long time. You have an idea of what you want. So there's nothing wrong with sending an email out and asking the question, hey, I'm interested in these 3 designers. What's the time frame? Do I need to be coming in now? Because whilst generally speaking, an 8-month window is fine, there are particular designers that say less than a year out, I'm not taking it on because they are fully booked. We still have COVID backlogs and things that are affecting planning journeys for modern day couples. So I think I've said this on this podcast many times, trust the expertise, I should say, of the vendors that you're booking. Ask them, in your situation, for this particular designer, for this particular collection, how far out can I come, or how far in advance do I need to book to ensure it's secured?
Yeah. So don't be afraid just to ask them for assistance.
Absolutely not. They're going to know what's best for their product and their item and their service. So trust their expertise. But yeah, generally speaking, it helps you to mirror out the rest of it. The same as hair and makeup. So once we start talking beauty and things like that, they're going to want to know what you're wearing so they can help to give you ideas on how your hair might look, or how your makeup might look, or how the barber's going to style your hair, these types of things.
How far out are we booking makeup artists, florists? I feel like I'm missing someone there. I guess hair as well.
Yeah, so hair, there's lots of things that come into play when we get to this kind of, what I'd normally say is you have your 18 months, or let's say you're doing it 2 years out, whenever your starting point is. Once you've locked in the venue and those kind of key 4 suppliers potentially looking at attire, you get a little bit of a break. Like you get to think, okay, great, I can breathe. I've locked in the key things. When I'm getting married, I know where I'm getting married, and I know who's going to be my dream team of suppliers. So then it's around the next thing. So you can take a bit of a breather. And I think these next kind of vendors that we're going to chat about require a lot more research, looking into lots of different florists, actually going out to their showroom, meeting the person behind the scenes, taste cake tastings. Like everyone wants to do multiple cake tastings. Like, why not? Free cake.
Why not?
Absolutely. So these things require a little bit more of time and effort. It's not just this is my photographer and I want 8 hours. It's how many bouquets do I need? Have I picked my bridal party yet? What color scheme? How many tables am I having? How many centerpieces do I need? Does my venue include centerpieces? So there's a lot more questions when we start to get further down the line, which is why you need these things locked in. Because if you were to ring up a florist before you've asked your bridal party, before you've picked your venue, you're really not going to be able to answer any of the pre-qualifying questions they're going to ask you.
Okay.
All you'll be doing is locking them in as an individual or a brand. You won't actually be able to get a quote because they have nothing to quote on, because they don't know who, when, where, what, why.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're giving yourselves 2 years to 18 months in terms of booking and planning. You're locking your major, we'll just call them the major 4. Then you're looking at, you've got a bit of a breather, but then that's when you start doing your research again of going to taste cakes, you're looking at florists, you're finding your makeup artists and that. What are invites? What's the socially acceptable invite time as well? And how do you, I guess, find a stationary person, Canva or something?
Yeah, there's so many different avenues these days. And I guess it depends, when is the wedding? Is it over Christmas and New Year period? Is it in a peak busy time that people are going to be likely invited to multiple weddings? Is it a destination wedding and you need to give people time to, save and book accommodation? So that's going to be dictated by the venue and the date that you've chosen. Save the dates are a great way of letting people know that you've chosen a date, but everything else is still TBC. So usually if you're looking at a save the date, you're looking at around about 12 to 14 months out. So because realistically, if you're within the year of your wedding, there's no need to send a save the date. Just do your invite slightly early. You've kind of already missed that boat. So if you're super organized, super planned, and you've got everything and you're concerned that it's a busy time and you want to make sure that people know, my wedding is this date, I want you to be available. Save the dates are great. Wedding websites as well. If you're not looking to do the physical card, you can do paperless post, which opens up on your email like a beautiful little invite with the envelope and everything. So there's lots of ways to do these things digitally. Facebook events. I've been invited, save the date for our wedding Facebook event. So I'd probably say about the 12 to 14 month window. And usually you're going to find that stationery supplier that's going to carry you through to the actual day of. So there's 3 key components to any stationery. That's the save the date, if you're choosing to have one, the physical invites, and the actual, what we call on the day stationery. So your menus, your place cards, your table numbers, and your seating chart. So once you've found a supplier that you love, you can usually, mirror that concept and color palette and theme throughout the entire journey. You can find great stationery suppliers on Easy Weddings, of course. We've got plenty on there. Pete mentioned Canva. If you want to DIY, there's some amazing designs on there whereby you can just purchase the design and print yourself at Officeworks, which is a great way to kind of save on costs as well and feel like you have a bit more creative control over your big day. But yeah, definitely jump on Easy Weddings. There's plenty of stationery supplies.
Yeah. And I think it could be help. Like, I'm not someone who's very great with color palettes and design and all that. Sometimes I can look at something and know it doesn't look right, but I don't know why. So I think having someone who's skilled in that, who is a graphic designer, will actually help you with the different, the different stocks and the paper and all these. It's nice to be guided, I think.
And I think similar to cakes and doing tastings or samples, most stationery suppliers will allow you to either purchase or order a complimentary sample pack, whereby you can touch and feel all the different colours and materials available to you and the thickness of the card, because unfortunately not everything looks exactly as it is online. We've all seen those online shopping horrors where you purchase a dress or a suit and what you end up with is actually completely different. So, couple of extra dollars on postage and getting a sample pack for your stationery, I absolutely recommend it.
And then, is there anything else that we need that we should be thinking about booking earlier, or are we ready to then talk about some of the things that might come up last minute, or then in the few sort of weeks that people like we didn't know we'd have to do, or organizing transport of things or things like that?
Absolutely. So I think we can kind of categorize. So we talked about the top 4 in the venue. We're then moving down the further track into cakes and flowers, which complement each other. And I guess once you've got that design, you usually have your attire that we've already talked about. So it's a great opportunity to then, we've talked about stationery, go ahead and lock in your hair and makeup artist. If you've got someone in particular, like we said in the beginning, if there's an individual that you want on your date, there's nothing wrong with getting ahead of the game and booking them early. But hair and makeup, I would probably, these days, you're looking at about anywhere between kind of 9 to 12 months. Previously you could kind of get away with this hair and makeup 6 months out, but these days, just with the demand and how many couples there are planning their big day just after the backlog of 2 years, I definitely recommend everything earlier than the normal. So hair and makeup, especially, like I said, if there's an individual, and cars as well. So, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast once. A bit of a horror story for me. Like, I had a great car supplier that I'd worked with for years, and I knew that they were going to drive me to my wedding day. And silly me, didn't get in early enough, and I didn't get the car that I wanted. I got an amazing limo from Amazing Limos, and the team were fantastic, and I was very happy. But at the time, my vision and my Pinterest board didn't match what I actually had on the day, because I didn't get in early enough, and I was silly.
If it's a must-have, get in early with it.
Absolutely. And especially if you're quite particular. So the reason I didn't get what I was after is because I wanted a white classic car. And while the supplier had, 10 cars overall, only 2 were white. So if there's a smaller quantity of the item that you want, get in early.
Get in early. Cool. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a few more minutes left.
Sure.
What are some of the things that couples find are a bit of surprise in terms of the things that sort of just suddenly appear that they need to do?
Absolutely. MCs is always an interesting one. I think a lot of our couples from the beginning, they think I'm going to ask my friend or my uncle or someone in the family. And then they get further down the track and they realize just how important it is to ensure that the day is run. And they think, okay, actually, I want a professional there. So a great opportunity there is to ask the celebrant you've already connected with if they're available that evening. Majority of celebrants would do MC duties as well. Asking your band or artist or performer if they can do the MCing duties as well. Or there are some fantastic MCs as well that you can book. So I guess it's something that's, people think at the beginning they won't need one and then they decide closer towards that they would. I'd say accommodation. So have you thought about where you're getting ready the day before and the day of? Do you need to book somewhere the night before? One of the biggest things, having worked in hotels myself, is couples don't think about check-in times. Like most hotels, your check-in is these days it's 3:00. They've all pushed it all back. Used to be 2. Most of the time you can't get into any hotels before 3 p.m. So realistically, if you're wanting to have photos and or get your hair and makeup done within that hotel room, highly recommend booking the night before. Whilst they might say you can do an early check-in, it's always subject to availability. And the reality is if that hotel's fully booked the night before, you won't be getting in your room any earlier. So I think accommodation and the night of as well, and also your logistics. So whilst you might have the wedding car locked in, how are you getting home from the reception? If you're not staying at the property, are you getting an Uber? Have you got a late night departure with your car supplier? Have you booked a bus to transport all the guests back to the local accommodation? So the logistics component comes into play. Rings is a big one. I think, for me, I was quite pleasantly surprised that the ring turnaround wasn't anywhere near as long as I expected. We were able to turn around ours in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. Sure. So we use Charles Rose Jewelers, which is an amazing jeweler in Melbourne. But that actually turned around a lot quicker than we thought. So that's something of interest. And I guess the other reason I'd suggest doing it close together is when you're there, they can shine up your engagement ring, or at least, give it a bit of a polish or resize or anything. So you can kind of do that all at once rather than purchase the rings a year out and then have to go back again to get them repolished.
Okay. So it really is the logistics of those little things, it sounds like, just organising, that really seem to pop up at the end there. Now, I'm sure there's a few other different vendors we haven't specifically mentioned, but we'll make sure that we'll provide either a comprehensive list or a link to a comprehensive list.
Absolutely.
And of course, people can reach out to you directly, and I'm sure you're more than willing to help. For free, everyone, once again. So definitely reach out to Easy Weddings if you're wanting just a bit of help organising everything. Darcy, Thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Well, just as you said, Pete, so we've got our planning team in-house. So we have venue specialists and supplier specialists, so we can help you through every single part of the journey, no matter when you come to us. But also the Easy Weddings app. So the website has a separate section for all our planning tools, but the app itself will actually set you reminders. You can put as much data in there as possible. And there is a step-by-step kind of to-do list on there that will give you notifications as to when you should be doing all of these things. Our email is make sure that you're part of our database on our website. We do weekly newsletters that go into detail about your next steps in your planning journey based on the wedding date you've provided us. We will actually give you a step 2. Make sure you have looked at bombonieres, make sure you've looked at bridesmaids proposal boxes, make sure you've looked at wedding shoes and all of these bits and pieces that come further down the track.
Perfect. Darcy, that's so much. Thank you so much for your guidance on all of this. I found it really helpful, even just for me, just knowing things to recommend for everyone now getting asked these questions, but I know it's going to help a lot of couples out there. So thank you. Love having you on the show. Love all the guidance that you give. Everyone, please, if you're looking for a team to help you, go to Easy Weddings. They would love to help you plan and organize your wedding. And as Darcy mentioned, they've got apps, they've got programs, they've got blogs, they've got it all. They've got all the suppliers on there. Go check them out. Great. Well, thank you, Darcy, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.